Hey guys, GHAZZY TV here with another Path of Exile video. I'm going to talk about the Animate weapon Puppeteer. Look at this. Pretty crazy. So we've been trying back and forth, trying to make this shit work and to make it reasonable multiple times over. We failed. And then my right-hand man, Mr. Lolash, who helps me with written guide content on PoE 2, he had this brilliant idea, and it's something I've never done on a minion build before. But after last night's PUBing, we were me, Lolash, and Atros, who helps me with written guys on PoE 1. The three of us were able to come to a conclusion of what to do with this. Now, we have a low-budget PUB. I'm going to, today on stream, be playtesting the leveling approach to this, which we have a theoretical idea what to do. And we are going to be working on a high-budget version, which might change a little bit. But let me talk about the idea that Lolash brought to my table. He said... I shit you not. He said dual wielding wands and having both of them trigger. And I said, what? So after digging through it multiple times over, we were actually able to make this, as you can see here on the PUB. Again, this is a low budget, so the EHP and everything is kind of low. It's a very, very, very low budget build, I'll show you. And this is the medium budget version. But most importantly, look at the block chance on this. We actually have reasonable block and a pretty good defensive layer on this with the current expected currency cost of this. I will obviously be playtesting this to see how effective it will actually be, but this is what we came up with. So Mr. Ash is saying we're going to run, well, we actually came to the conclusion that we're going to run a shield on the low budget version and then dual wield on the medium budget. So I'm going to talk about the low budget first. The theoretical leveling is going to very likely, which I'll playtest, of course, in today's stream, going to be to level with Rolling Magma to level 8, Melee Splash SRS to level 12, Absolution till you hit the first Labyrinth, at which point we get Marionettes. Marionettes allows us to animate an additional copy of Animate Weapon. Animate go and get some damage, not that it matters too much. And the defenses on items attached to the AG applies to Animate Weapon is very small, so it's kind of irrelevant. However, the inherited melee splash is something we'll be utilizing in the leveling stage, as we'll be leveling with melee Animate Weapon starting from the point of campaign and low budget approach. We are then going to be utilizing this till we can farm Merciless Lab, which is the third lab, in which it is much easier to farm the Transfigurated Gem. We can also buy it, of course, but the idea is to have this build be able to play that way and farm the Merc Lab for the actual Animate Weapon of ranged arms, at which point we're going to have ranged enemy weapons. Now, why would we do ranged weapons instead of utilizing Marionette's melee? Splash for free. It's very simple. The way Animate Weapon works is that we're kind of forced into this position where you need to have defensive layers of your Animate Weapon. Unlike SRS, Animate Weapon can be attacked by enemies, and therefore they need the defensive layers, and they're pretty squishy. And they also need some help with accuracy, hence these two nodes here for minion accuracy. So it's kind of a bit of a nuisance, if you will, in making them work in an effective way. And therefore, range Animate Weapons allows us to be in a position where we can have less defenses on them, assuming we have some sort of end unit or a minion that is frontlining for us so that they will take up aggro instead, allowing our ranged weapons to freely attack. Now, there's a couple of things we've been diving into and checking, such as the idea of using Blessed Rebirth, since we're going to be able to summon these very, very quickly, especially with the double copies. And also the idea of our two trigger weapons in medium budget, where we might use zombies or skeletons to every now and then create minions that's going to help us frontline to make enemies hit them instead of a ranged enemy weapons. Because normally, Animate Weapon build goes for Decay Ward to keep them alive a little bit better, and what we're doing with this is leeching instead. So this is the general low-budget build, and we're going for crit, and that is because of this node right here, Feeding Frenzy. Obviously, our minions becomes aggressive, but it gives the minions base attack from attacks becomes the base crit of our main hand weapon. This means that your initial low-budget weapon should be something like this with a +1, maybe some minion damage, but the trigger is kind of comfortable and rather important. But you want to have a wand that also has a base critical strike mod to increase the base crit of your actual wand, because that will apply to your minions thanks to this one. Sadly, Rotting Might, which is the strength and whatnot, is actually a completely wasted ascendancy and doesn't do shit for us that much. Like, it barely matters, but it does give us a little strength, a little life, I guess. Marination is the last one to give ourselves and our minions to make sure the defensive layers. So this is the low budget approach. Obviously, I'll leave a link in the description down below to the PUB. We are picking up practical applications simply because we're going to need some help with dexterity and also a little bit of intelligence. This can be done in a variety of different ways. We are going to help Alira for some extra increased elemental resistances, and Lunaris and Gruthkul as the Pantheons. And if you look at the skills section, we are using critical strikes, critical damage, and this is when you have a crit-based actual support modifier on your weapon to focus on the crit approach. So before that, we're not going to take these nodes, and before we go crit with the third ascendancy, we're not going to focus too much on the crit. However, the other items that we're running is a generic shield minion damage with life. We have a +1 level of minion helmet, +2 is better, of course. And we're going to be running Lionized Vision. This is something we're going to pick up for the Animate weapon when we're running range to give them free pierce. And then you can switch in your vicious projectile changes to greater multiple projectiles for clearing versus single target. And this is a 1C item right now. However, it does require 160 dexterity. This is where it's going to be putting a little pressure on our dex. The other part is obviously, again, we need dexterity. So when you can sort that from your other gear pieces, gloves, rings, wherever you can find it. You also have some jewels to play with, which is also something we've done a little different approach to. Boots, obviously, highest priority is movement speed, then life, then attribute resistances. We're going to run a replica Dragon Fang. This lowers the attribute requirements on gear, and +3 level of Animate weapon. Gives them damage, life, and accuracy. Very important, and some extra reservation. We're going to be running some Amethyst rings if we get some Chaos Rest. In low budget, you might not get your capped Chaos Rest. You just go for whatever ring you get for life. Preferably, this is where you're going to solve a lot of your dexterity necessities on both rings. Do keep that in mind that it is tight on dex, so make sure you don't neglect that. Darkness of Throne, mediocre roll, and then we're running no life on the jewels. This is the first time that I'm going to showcase a build where I'm not going to tell you to run life on every jewel. Instead, we're going to aim for 2 damage modifiers, and in this case, we do want to help our minions' accuracy. You can check it in the calculation tab and go make sure it looks like this. You'll see the accuracy rating here. If it's not 100%, then you're going to want to have some accuracy from our jewels to help assist with this. And we're going to run 2. I think we actually have 3 of those. No, 2 of them in the low budget. So essentially, we're looking at 2 damage jewels. Having 2 damage jewels could be in the form of physical damage, minion attack damage when you use the minion skill recently, as well as minion attack and cast speed modifiers. Those are the 3 main ones you're looking for when it comes to the damage jewels. And we're not actually focusing on prioritizing life here. No, I would prefer a life jewel mod, but we are going for the damage ones. And this is how we set this up. In terms of specters, we're using 1 Arena Master and 2 Carnage Chieftain as shown in the PUB. Other supports and other gems we're using is Purity of Elements for resistances, Precision for the crit, as well as accuracy. We're running our own Determination in the low budget. Ray Spectres and Animate Guardian, should you use an Animate Guardian, which is just a simple Leer cast and Dying Breath approach, which is not set at the moment. It is set in the config. So the Animate, we have some fine-tuning to do with this PUB, clearly. So that's how we set up the Animate Guardian and the Ray Spectre with Meat Shield Minion Life. And we have a mobility being Frost Blink, Feeding Frenzy, together with the Chaos Golem and a Convocation. We have a Blade Fall Spell Cascade, and we run a Frost Bomb to lower enemies' regeneration if needed. It's not a super important detail, but it is nice to have. You can skip the Frost Bomb in this build if you don't want it. And then, of course, in our trigger weapon, we are going to run a Desecrate, Spirit Offering, and Cursing Enemies with Assassin's Mark. Now, if you want to go crazy with the Animate Guardian, you can make it have Windscreen Boots and apply Vulnerability from Incursed Implicit, for example. So there's some options there. But that's how the low budget works. So not really that interesting. It's pretty generic, straightforward. We are going to run Eldritch Batteries. That means Energy Shield bases or Armor Energy Shield bases. Very important to make sure you have enough Energy Shield to pay for the cost of the skills. This little node right here is giving us a lot of that energy shield. So as you can see, without this node, you really do need energy shield bases to have enough energy shield to pay for the cost of the skills. And that's about it. Let's move on to talk about the more interesting part of this build, and that is the medium budget. As you can see, we're cutting this entire right-hand side. Reason for that is because Devouring Item is very cheap. Nobody actually uses this shit. However, the Devouring Item is in a position, actually, the Animate weapon was there. It's just not the colors I usually use. My bad. So yes, we have Dying Breath, Leer Cast, Animate Guardian there. I apologize. Devouring the Item gives us the Eldritch Battery. Helps us with reservation as well. We talked the gems reservation for our RS. Most importantly, it gives us the Eldritch Battery, which allows us to take away the entire right-hand side of nodes here. We'll be oiling Death Attunement for Spectres in this. Other changes we're making is obviously the possibility of getting a corrupted Lioness Vision if you want to, but that's for higher budget. Replica Dragonfang remains the same. Now we're running a higher rolled version of Darkness Enthroned. We've squeezed in a Watcher's Eye for physical damage mitigation through Determination. It's a very easy way to up that physical max damage hit, which is 16.7k here. We've added proper flask to this build. Again, we are yet again utilizing accuracy jewels. Now, this jewel here is probably pretty expensive. Again, if that's the case, skip the life mod, because we are going to focus on the other mods for this build. The other jewels I've done is I've just added a life mod to the double damage jewels. I'm not sure if I haven't added it on all of them, but that's what I've done here. So depending on the price of the jewels, otherwise you skip the life mod, which is kind of crazy for me to say. So this one is a bit pricey, depending on the market. Other than that, we are using a large cluster 12 passive, not a meta version. We're not using the increase effect. We're just using a mediocre shit roll of increased attack and cast speed, a life, and helping intelligence and or dexterity. But in this version, the intelligence is the important part. So getting something like this shouldn't be too expensive. And that's what we're using in this build, which will be located here on the left-hand side. So that's the item section. However, the big change is here, the fun part. We are yet again using a +1. We could possibly look at +2 ones for the medium budget, but we've kept the budget as low as possible. So we're using a +1 with a reasonable increased local crit strike chance. Other one to have our ascendancy give our minions a lot of crit strike chance. And we even have one here which increased critical strike chance for our minions. Most likely you'll find ones that have not both of these crit mods. You can have +2 with local crit and a trigger. But the cool thing here is that we'll be dual wielding these ones, but you don't need crit on the second one. You can have modifiers like crit multi or critical strike chance for minions in there, but the local crit is only important for your main hand, which is the left slot when you're looking at your gear. And then it's just another trigger, which is really fun. And the reason for this, I'll show you the skills in a second here. It's pretty cool. Tree-wise is very simple, similar, but we're cutting this part of the tree, and we're replacing that by going all the way down for Versatile Combatant to give a spell block, and we're picking up a bunch of block nodes. These block nodes are the ones that gives you block chance when you're dual wielding, which works with wands, of course. So a lot of these block nodes are either shield and dual wielding, or just straight up dual wielding. This one here is block attack damage whilst dual wielding or wielding a shield. And since we can utilize this with wands, allows us to actually get a really cool block chance here, 6859 in the current state of this, which is pretty goddamn cool to see. Now, we could use a roomies to fix that little block chance on spells if we wanted to. We decided not to rely on that, and that's kind of like the approach we're running. And I really like this. It's such a cool thing to do. We do, however, lose the possibility of leap, slam, whirling blade, shield charge mobility. So instead, we'll be running and using flame dash or frostblade, whichever you prefer. Skill-wise, obviously we're starting using awakened gems, but the same thing applies to the animate weapon. However, we are no longer going to be running determination. We're going to use specters for this. We're going to have a perfect guardian turtle to apply the determination, and therefore we are going to run vitality to help us with sustain, because unlike a necromancer, we don't get leech. Instead, we're going to be running vitality to give us some life regeneration. We can squeeze in a flesh and stone, which the defensive stance, the sand stance, gives us a very inflated amount of damage mitigation in POB. So we're running we're running blood stance to give us more damage, because most of the times when playing this, you'll be pretty close to the enemy targets. You can use blood stance to make enemies take more physical damage, allows you to actually up the damage of this build. So we're using this as an offensive aura. And then Ray Specters, it's the same thing as it is in the low budget. However, we are going to use a perfect blood demon. This demon allows you to trigger a pride aura, which gives increased physical damage taken from the enemies by using the Spectre. He's really cool, and he is fucking big. So it's a really cool Spectre to use, and he's beefy as fuck, so he should never die. We have a Frostblink same setup as we have in the low budget here, and the Mobility and Chaos Golem for physical damage mitigation. We have a trigger weapon with Blade Fall, Spell Cascade, and you can use Frost Bomb here to remove regeneration from enemies. Again, you don't really need the Frost Bomb. You could change the Frost Bomb for something stupid like a skeleton to trigger every 8 seconds a skeleton in front of you that enemies will attack rather than you and your minions. I'm going to play around with this. I'll probably go with the skeletons because theoretically I like the idea of that. And then the other trigger weapon, we're using Desecrate, Spirit Offering, and the Snipers. Mark Curse on those. So we basically have these triggers happening once every 8 seconds, 2 of these spells will trigger, 1 from each weapon. Next skill you use, trigger the next one. Next skill you use, you'll trigger the third one. And then 8 seconds from the first, you'll trigger the first one again. Rinse, repeat this process. And thanks to Marination, which is this node right here, we have quite a lot of energy shield, and we are actually unable to blow ourselves up and not burn all our mana. Thanks to Marionettes, we're not utilizing the splash here to avoid spending too much investment on minion defenses, but we get an additional copy every time we do something. So what then happens is every time you use a skill, you're going to cast out Bladefall with Spell Cascade, which creates lingering blades on the ground, which you will use to summon your animate weapon on those blades. So it's a very lazy playstyle. A lot of people don't like playing animate weapon because they have to cast Bladefall and summon your weapons. It takes 8 ages to summon them. This build is designed to trigger these things so that as soon as you do something, you'll spam out some blades, and that's a lot of blades. And you don't have to cast 18, how many weapons do we have? 19? 20 weapons. You don't have to cast 20 times. You cast 10 times to get all of your weapons up. However, the duration of these weapons are 40 seconds, and you're going to have blades consistently triggered, so the build is pretty lazy. You're not really casting much. It's your mobility skill. Don't even cast your curse. Your mobility skill, convocation, and then you click summon animate weapon every now and then. So it's very similar playstyle to that of like an SRS build, kinda. I'll be playtesting this on stream, of course, with the leveling today, and we'll see how this pans out. The other specters we're using is a perfect forest warrior to give our minions onslaught. And the other part of this is the perfect guardian turtle to give us a determination, which allows us to run the Watcher's Eye. And as I'm looking at this, I'm pretty sure that these are given onslaught. Yes, so we will be making some changes to this because the low budget is giving the minions onslaught, which is a POB bug as soon as you have the Forest Warrior enabled in the POB as an option, even if you don't use it. Just as that being an option gives your minions onslaught, so you'll basically have to reduce their attack speed in the config to make this accurate. So if I do that, it would be minions have 20% reduced attack speed. I think that works. Yes, there we go. So now it's more accurate, if you will, in terms of DPS. And this is because the minions gets this free onslaught. It's quite annoying. But we'll be making some adjustments and changes to this and see where we land. As the DPS and low budget is at 2.6 million. But we'll be looking at the medium budget. And obviously, we're going to work on a high budget build as well. Anyways, I don't want to rant too much. I'll drop a link to the PUB down in the descriptions below. Hope you guys will enjoy this. Let me know in the comments what you think of this build. And we'll see how it turns out. But the PUB might be getting some changes. And if it's good enough, we'll make a written guide for it as well. You guys can check out. And yeah, end of rant. Hit the like button. Subscribe for more content. You know the deal. Just, do it. There's like 60% of you guys are not even subscribed yet. And, just click the button. It's 2 seconds. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Till then, stay safe and keep rocking.